my story isn't probably as exciting as a lot of people. I'm not like the Apostle Paul, or who was Saul at the time, where a light just came down on a road and the Lord spoke to him and, basically brought him to his knees. Not like, the tax collectors and publicans, where they were just living these awful, sinful lives and how they treated people. For me, my journey started at birth. And my parents were Christian parents, still are, and they started taking me to Bible school before I ever knew I was in Bible school. I went to church my whole life. My dad's song leader. He was a deacon in the church. My grandfather was an elder in the church. So I came from a family of great faith. And also the church family. I just remember people who put a lot of investment into me, whether it was those in Bible classes, teachers, and people like a Miss Cashin that would, as a child, I remember sitting with her, and she always had stuff for us to do that was coloring or something that had to do with Jesus or the Bible in some way. And so I always grew up in that environment. I grew up in a Christian youth group, and I grew up with people who loved God. And so for me, it happened, I was baptized out at a Christian camp. The singing, the people there, and just the environment that it created, it just put something inside of me that I already knew, but I also knew that I needed to do more, and I needed to be baptized. And I remember calling my parents and telling them this is what I'm thinking about, and we had a long conversation about it, and I was baptized out at Maywood Christian Camp. And so my journey just continued, and I've continued to do these things. And the reason I was baptized is because, one thing that's always been instilled is to obey God. I just always want to do that. I always taught, about heaven and about being with God. And I knew baptism was a very important part of what all of that meant. And so that decision is something that just started this new journey and relationship with God that continues to build even to this day. I know it's not as glorious as someone who may have lived the life of the prodigal son and then came and found God in some way. But I was always surrounded by people who love Christ, and always felt that was an important thing. So that's why, I ended up being baptized, is because all the investment that had been put into me. I always had a very hot temper as a kid, and it's still, it's not something that just miraculously happened by night, but that's one thing. I think how I see people, how I treat people, and I always tried to be good to people, but I didn't necessarily have empathy. I think empathy is something that's come, mercy, being more merciful to people, because I realized that even though I was raised the way I was and I was a good kid, so to speak, I needed God. I couldn't do it without Him. You're not going to be perfect. And that's not why we come to Christ, is because we're perfect, it's because He is. And you can't really enjoy the beauty and have the security of a loving God and His presence until you make that decision to follow Jesus, to follow Him wherever it takes you, which includes the water. But it's just the beginning. It's not the end. And the help that we need, we find at a time of our baptism, where the Spirit of God now comes and joins us and dwells in us and helps us. We're still not going to be perfect, but now we have God with us and God's help. And I think that is just invaluable.